Again, if you ever have a question about anything, any call, email, whatever, just call the police department. We will be happy to work with you and advise you on whether it's legitimate or a scam. And on a side note, charity drive. Many of you have gotten used to the fact that starting in October, you start to see police officers around Chester County that have beards. We finally went through the process and incorporated this into a true charity. And the Blue Beards for Charity was organized this year. And this year we have 4 charities that we're going to be raising money for. They're all local charities. The first one is Unite for Her, which is a support network for breast cancer victims. The Sambuco Children's Education Fund, an officer who died very unexpectedly and left behind 4 young children. A Child's Light, which is a charity that raises money for children who need counseling after being exposed to domestic violence. And lastly, the Chester County Crime Victim Center. In addition to the officers raising money, we're also going to be posting something and hoping that our residents will share their usual generosity and join with us in raising money for these local charities. Are there any questions about anything that I presented tonight?
Yeah, I just a point of information, Chief. Have we investigated any felonies in the last month?
Well, we have it overall in the department, but I wouldn't say that we've investigated any in East Goshen. Primarily what you're looking at is what I would consider part 2s, misdemeanors.
Chief, you did mention in your topical summary of the 400 and some incidents this month, generally you mentioned road rage. Were there any notable ones where an officer had to respond, even had to draw a weapon in the process of a situation, or was there any of those road rage incidents that were notable that just bring our attention to the fact of the need to be calm and maintain your composure in circumstances that can turn into something very uncomfortable, unpleasant, and even violent? Anything in particular about any incidents this month?
Well, we had an increase in them. And what I will tell you is that there's 2 sides to every story. We did not bring charges in any of them because there were differing viewpoints of what happened, why it happened. But the one thing that we always do with the officer's response is we try to mediate with people and help them understand that if you are the victim of road rage, responding is not going to make the situation any better. There was one incident that was along Route 3, and I think it was East Goshen, but it was close to the line, and it was 2 young ladies, and they ended up escalating to the point that they were throwing trash at each other's cars, and then they got out of the cars. So I'm sure that you've read everything, like, for example, the incident that happened in the weekend in West Whiteland, where an individual stopped this vehicle in the passing lane of the 30 bypass and then went back to confront somebody, or whatever happened. They're still investigating it. And ultimately, he ended up being struck by a vehicle and seriously injured. So we haven't had anything along that level. But like I said, there's usually 2 sides to every incident. And if somebody does something to you, your best bet is to just let it go, call 911, but don't respond, because that's when it escalates. But no, we haven't had any incidents where officers had to charge anybody or had to draw their weapons or anything along that line.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief, I have a question. The SRO, what is the SRO currently doing?
Well, I don't know if anybody's aware of it, but Zoom meetings are prone to hacking. And we have had at least 1 or 2 incidents where we've had to get involved in an investigation. So right now, that's been his primary focus, is 2 individuals hacked into a classroom meeting, said some racially inappropriate things. And now we are trying to do an investigation to see if charges can be brought, what should be done with the student who provided his code to these individuals to access it. Technology
Wow.
is, nothing's changed just because the students aren't physically in school.
Right.
And quite honestly, some special needs students are physically in school. So, well, we're still quite busy with that.
Is this a time, Chief, when the SRO, under the mostly virtual remote learning platform that's underway in the school district, where the SRO might make his way into the schools physically to have engagements at different times with either counselors or the teachers on any given matter, so that there remains some physical interface and presence, understanding the students aren't there, but I'm not sure all faculty are operating from home or whether they're working from their classrooms. I'm not sure about that platform. But is the SRO making any physical presence, any contacts with faculty, administration, and staff during this time?
Many of the faculty and staff are at the school, and as far as our interactions, we are having as many interactions now as we did before COVID-19 started. So we are stopping in, we're doing patrol checks, and we're having conversations. Wherever we can get into the buildings, we are getting into the buildings.
Yeah.
And if not, we're doing virtual meetings and also telephone conferences.
Okay, good. Thanks for that.
Anybody else have anything for the chief? Chief, thank you very much. Appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you, Chief.
In your
Thanks,
house.
Chief.
Good night,
I want to
Chief.
ask the public if they had any questions for me before I leave the meeting. I didn't know if there was
I
anything.
can, but it's kind of violating our rules, but I can.
Oh,
do
okay,
that.
I'm sorry.
That's
I
all
just-
right,
I know I'm
because you're
not
gonna
gonna be here
leave,
for
and
the whole meeting.
if they wait to the end, they're not gonna be able to do it anyway. So,
Exactly.
does anybody in the gallery, of our guests, have any questions for the chief?
Take care, Chief.
Being none,
Okay,
chief.
take
I'd
care.
say-
Have a good
I'd have to
evening,
say
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
You
Chief.
too. Good night.
Thanks for
Take
coming.
care. The next item on our business is from
Marty,
our,
can I just interrupt for 1 second? I did have a request from that everybody identify yourself when you're speaking. With so many callers on the line, they can't see who's speaking. So if you're speaking, just say this, just identify yourself, please. Thank you.
Okay.
are we
Okay,
done?
yep, next.
Okay. Our next is a former supervisor and friend of mine, our fire chief, I promoted him already. I'll never hear the end of it. Carmen's here tonight to give the fire report of the 3 fire companies, and also his report as to anything he wants to share with the board. At the end of that, we can ask him questions about any of those things. So Carmen, it's all yours.
This is Carmen Batavio. I am fire marshal. I am not the fire chief. Let's clarify that.
Oh, my God.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you had a nice holiday.
No, you want to be the chief, so I moved you up at the
Come on.
I'm just a lowly firefighter.
All right, come on.
I'll try to keep it as short as possible. The report that I'm going to give you is for East Goshen only, and it's a recap. You have all of the backup data in your information packet. So for Goshen Fire Company, we had 41 responses for August. We had 15 fire police. We had 154 EMS, which is very responsible to track. You will see that in your backup data. Malvern Fire Company, we had 18 calls, 3 BLS, which is basic life support, and 15 ALS, which is advanced life support. Good Fellowship, we had 53 calls, which is about the same percentage. It runs 10 to 11%. It was 11% for August. So with that, I will ask the board if they have any questions.
I have one question. Carmen, nice to see you. Under the monthly update, key indicators, which includes 4 categories: patients treated, patients 65 and over, EMS calls to assisted living, and the 4th one, automatic fire/CO alarms, carbon monoxide alarms. There were 40 of those. I just am curious, and it may come from staff, an update on false alarms and the enforcement of the ordinance that we have on false alarms. What's the relationship of those number of calls and our administration of the ordinance as, for a little bit of an update and information for the public as well?
You have an ordinance in place that allows a grace period for calls, and then after that, there is a scale of charging that is different between residential and commercial. I don't have those rates on me this evening. We do have some problem children, I will call them. Two of them are actually the group homes where we have a situation. One happens to be right behind me, where we've had numerous false alarms. We're trying to work with their staff and education, but the township does get the code department does get a report for the amount of false alarms, and the code department would handle it internally as far as when it's time to charge and what they charge. Commercial is different. There's a different scale for that. But again, that's handled by the code division. This is just the reporting division for the fire company.
Thanks, Carmen. And Mark Gordon, I presume that you track that and you're administering the ordinance as necessary and interfacing to try and be a diplomat at the same time, making sure the ordinance is properly administered in the need for fines if that's the case. I think you're doing that, but just wanted to hear your voice.
Yes, absolutely. We process false alarms on a every day or two basis. We get a report from the police department on the number of calls that they respond to for burglar alarms, as well as a fire alarm calls, and they are charged after their third in a 12-month period. So, and it does add up. So I can provide that report for your next meeting.
Good to see. All right, thanks, Mark.
Great.
Carmen, thanks.
Carmen, do you have a fire marshal's report? And if you don't, do you want to give a little background on that affair you had with the one that we were talking about?
Yeah, I have. Well, there's three that you saw from the beginning of August, which is the fire in Chatham. I gave you an update on the Franklin Village Pool, which you're aware of, and Remed facility on North Chester Road. That's an inspection I did with a new administrator that should be sending a letter in to Mark Gordon. I don't know whether he received it yet or not, but verifying our meeting and the fact that they want to become good neighbors. Mark, I'll touch base with you. I don't know if you've gotten that or not.
Okay.
What I would like to touch on is my promise to this board of immediate response, whether through myself or through staff, of anything that would be very sensitive in nature. And why don't we just come right out and say pipeline incidents or anything, any crisis, any catastrophic event, any major fire, fatality. My job is to immediately get to the Board of Supervisors to at least give you enough information so that if you receive calls from residents, your hands are not like stuck in your dishwasher. So we had a call on Manley Road. It's called Enbridge, which is used to be Texas Eastern.
Right.
Mark Miller did follow up on this, and he called me back today. The manager of the complex evidently had a subcontractor come in and do a blowdown without notification. I think Enbridge, correct me, Mark Gordon, if I'm wrong, but at least my conversation with Mark Miller and hearing this other fellow seemed to be up and above, and they want to give notice. The subcontractor didn't in this case. One of our residents heard the noise, didn't know what it was, made the report. We responded as a fire company. As soon as I found out what it was, which was like 2 minutes after the report, as soon as I could get to Ricky and or John, I think it was Ricky I got to, I didn't have the capability of sending it out with my cell phone. So I had Ricky send an email to the board that it ended up being just a blowdown, and it was a non-notification. I believe, talking to Mark Miller today on this subject, that the problem with the company has been rectified. Unfortunately, it was done without any notice. So not a good procedure, but it is what it is.
Are we allowed to ask for notification?
Yes, we have, Mark Miller has made it very clear to all of the people that he works with that we are to be notified. Anything unusual with blowdowns or anything that's going to create something different that may create some sort of a resident concern. So yes, we are supposed to get notice, as we have in the past. I believe it was 3 weeks ago. Ricky, maybe you would remember, maybe a month. We got a notice. I believe it was up at Giant, where they were doing a blowdown. It was either Giant or Bellingham. I can't remember. But we did have notice on that. The county gets notice, so they're aware of it. And Mark Miller, through his contacts, advises the township. So that's how we like to play it, so that we are up to speed and we can handle any situation, you know, before it blows out of control. As it was, it ended up being nothing. It was just a subcontractor that was not really using his head, following procedures. I don't believe, to the best of my knowledge, the manager was real happy with it. So I don't know if I want to be in on that conversation with the subcontractor.
Just for clarity,
Ricky, as a result of that issue there that Corbett described, I know David suggested that we send a letter out to all the pipeline operators in the township. I'm not sure if what Carmen is saying, that we have done everything that we should do with respect to David's request. Have we or have we not, Ricky, with respect to asking these people to make sure we're notified if anything is going to take place?
We did send an email to Enbridge, which is Transcon, Texas Eastern. I still need to do one to Transcontinental, but they're the only two, and obviously Adelphia. So I got one of them done. I still got two more to do.
Well, that's good. That's good stuff.
David, you have any comments to make?
so just for clarification, I think in front of the Giant, they were doing pressure testing, hydrostatic testing of the, and that makes noise, but they're either water or air in the pipes. And the blowdown, they're actually doing a release of, in that case, methane gas, and it would be odorized. So people might smell gas, and that's why we need to make sure that we're being notified and we have an opportunity to communicate with the residents, so that there's obviously a hypersensibility and regarding pipeline activity, and the operators in our township need to understand that and appreciate it and respect the needs and for information by our residents. So that's all I'll say.
Does anybody else have any comments on this? If not, we'll move on to the next item. The next item is.
Good night, folks. Take care.
Oh, you too.
Thank you, Carmen.
Thanks, Carmen.
Carmen, thank you. Go home to bed now. For those that have the agenda, the next item is number 8. It's the financial report for August. John?
Marty, with your permission, I would respectfully ask that we move on to the Malvern Institute. These kind of pro forma things we can handle after that's taken care of.
Does everybody want to do that?
Sure.
Yeah, fine.
Okay,
Love that.
I've asked Ricky to give us, as well as the people that are here, an understanding of what our responsibility is tonight. And for those that don't know, Kristen Camp, our solicitor, Kristen is here this evening. She has also participated in this. And Ricky, if you just summarize what's going on, it would be most helpful.
So in 2018 or 17, because they ran together, Malvern Institute applied to expand their non-conforming use, non-conforming structure. The board took a position that they took no position on whether or not they met the criteria for the doctrine of natural expansion. However, they did say that if the zoning hearing board determined that they were entitled to it, that the board would request that the zoning hearing board improve 28 conditions, and which would include a 1-story addition. The zoning hearing board denied the request. The Malvern Institute appealed to the Court of Common Pleas. The court came back and said, zoning hearing board, you are wrong. Malvern is entitled to the relief. So that question is off the table. However, they were not clear on whether or not they were entitled to the original proposal, which was a second floor on top of the existing building, or to the alternate proposal. The zoning hearing board had an initial meeting on this subject back at the beginning of the year, and basically concluded that, well, they would allow people to present evidence, testimony or something, and then COVID hit. And so now we're at the point where the zoning hearing board is going to take it up again. But the question for the board tonight is whether or not they're entitled to the expansion is done. That decision was made by the court. It was not appealed. So the question for the board is, do they still want the one-story addition with the 28 conditions? And that's what the staff is recommending we do. We believe that's consistent with the position the board took back in 2018.
Okay, I know Michelle asked make a couple comments about this.
I'll wait until the residents have had a say. Is that okay, Marty?
Not really. We got to go first.
No? All right. It's very clear to me. We have to make a choice, and it's not that we disrespect any of our neighbors. I think that it's very important for all of our neighbors to understand that. The residents need to understand that we appreciate the fact that you put all this information together for so concisely. So thank you for that. But the judge gave us very specific orders. And so I guess we'll just wait to hear from our residents, but we were only offered 2 options. We were not offered 3. So.
Yeah, and I'd like to,
Mike, you want to make a comment?
yeah, just very pretty briefly, and following up with Michelle. I know that the investment that the residents have in the neighborhood, and as Michelle has said, we respect very much the concerns they've had. That was our interest in the very beginning with these suggestions that we had for the zoning hearing board, should they at that time decided on granting the relief, to consider those suggestions that the board had put forth in an effort to be responsive to what we thought we were hearing of resident interest and issues associated therewith. The emphasis on the Board of Supervisors is really not best placed. The focus of everyone of particular interest is should be right with the zoning hearing board. And the zoning hearing board is in a difficult spot now. Initially, they granted relief, which was in the interest of the residents. So they clearly heard the residents while they acted independently and as a quasi-judicial entity that they are. The decision was very favorable to the residents that the zoning hearing board made at that time. But the Court of Common Pleas Judge Tennell was quite assertive, and his conclusion reads, in his decision, after careful review, this court concludes that the decision of the zoning hearing board of February 28, 2019 represents a capricious disregard of the material and competent evidence in the record and a manifest abuse of discretion. That is about as strong as it's going to get. And the zoning hearing board, as attorneys that they are, the members, they've got to respond to that. The judge at the Court of Common Pleas completely, unequivocally said that the zoning hearing board did not make the right decision. For us, we wish that the decision had stood, frankly, and that's no disrespect to Malvern Institute. They're trying to run a business, but as a board, I think we got a lot of the things that the residents were saying. Again, the information, the summary of information and incidents, it's voluminous, and there was a lot of work to do that. We are interested in the best outcome for you. At this point in time, the court has taken over, and it is now back in the hands of the zoning hearing board. And I hope those who are listening tonight will be in attendance at that meeting to at least hear the proceeding and be able to offer comment. And then from there, that decision, those parties of record in the matter and in the application can then appeal, as far as I understand, the decision again. Rick, is that correct? Or Kristen, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's all my comments. I just wanted to share that and kind of piggyback with Michelle. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments?
I'd like to make a motion
Okay, David.
for consideration. I'd like to move that we refer back to the zoning hearing board, the Malvern Institute's application for expansion of its facilities. Should the zoning hearing board approve the expansion, the Board of Supervisors requests that the zoning hearing board consider the conditions originally agreed upon and included in the minutes of the February 6, 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting.
I'll second that.
David, I'm assuming that you are also positioning that such that our original request that we didn't take a position, but if they agreed to do this,
Well,
that
Marty,
we would like the conditions imposed. Is that correct?
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
There is no decision for the zoning hearing board to make with respect to whether the applicant is entitled to the relief. The court has already declared that the applicant is entitled to the relief, which is a special exception and variance relief. The real issue for the zoning hearing board to decide is which proposal submitted by the Malvern Institute is the one that the zoning hearing board will grant the relief for, and then what, if any, conditions will be imposed. So it's not a matter of the zoning hearing board going back and saying, yes, they're entitled to relief, or no, they're not. The court has already spoken on that issue. So the only issues left for the ZHB is which of the proposals should be approved and what, if any, conditions should be attached to that approval.
Thank you, Kristen. And in that regard, am I correct, Rick and Kristen, in the 28, I'm going to continue to use suggestions that the board made if and when, that of those, in those 28 suggestions, one of them was the one-story option?
That's correct. Condition number 4 indicated that the Board of Supervisors wanted the applicant to build the one-story addition.
Okay. So what David has put forth in the motion is implicit. It's implicit that in the suggestions that one story is already in those 28 suggestions. So that would be contained in the motion.
That's correct.
Yes.
David, can I ask you to restate that motion? I lost you a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just
cruel.
looking at, I'm just looking to taking Kristen's comments into account to revise the motion. Then,
David, would it be appropriate if you were to, would your motion be acceptable to say that you would move for the Board of Supervisors to advocate the position before the zoning hearing board that's stated in the letter of February 7th of 2018?
exactly, yeah, that we move that the Board of Supervisors request that the zoning hearing board consider the conditions originally agreed upon and included in the minutes of the February 6, 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting.
Got it.
And that
Okay.
would encompass the one-story addition is included in those 28 conditions.
I'll reiterate the second to that then.
I want to refer everybody to the pages, the 2 pages that staff, I assume it was Ricky, put together, because in the paragraph ahead of the motion, Ricky was very clear as to why we took the position that we did. And I want to take, since it's only a couple sentences, I just want to put this as a matter of record with respect to this motion. The staff is of the opinion that the one-story addition with the conditions set forth by the Board of Supervisors letter is a better approach. It will create less impact to the surrounding community, and it will help mitigate any new impacts the expansion may have on the surrounding community. I think that's the basis for which we had a ton of discussion about this, but when you distilled it down, I think those few words actually recognize the position that we take along with the motion and that David made and the second. So I feel very comfortable with that. Is there any other comments from board members?
Point of information, Marty. And I direct this to Kristen. For the people who are listening here, I want to nail down a couple points. The first point is the Board of Supervisors has absolutely no authority to overrule the judge's decision.
That's correct.
Okay. Number two, the zoning hearing board certainly can receive our requests or suggestions. However, we cannot overrule the zoning hearing board.
Well, if once the zoning hearing board makes a decision, the township is a party automatically to any zoning hearing. So if the township wanted to, it could file an appeal from the zoning hearing board's second decision.
Good point. But as a board, we can't make a resolution or
No.
a motion.
Only the court could
overrule.
overturn the zoning hearing board's decision.
They're an autonomous
That's correct.
board. Okay,
Yeah, correct.
I just
Correct.
wanted to have those points made so people were clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. They were good points. Appreciate that.
Let's
Anybody
open
else have anything to say? I will open the floor up to those that are here this evening. If anybody has any questions, comments, or whatever they would like to make, that's in our audience. Susan, does everybody know what to do?
We have 23 callers. If you wish to speak, you need to press *6, identify yourself, and then speak. *6 will unmute you.
Susan, are the callers listening in real time?
Yes, the callers are. Yes.
So they're getting the YouTube 15 seconds later, but they're listening
No,
in real time.
the callers on this Zoom call are live. They're not,
Thank you.
They're not on YouTube.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself.
Okay, please identify yourself.
Terry Relic.
Okay.
Start speaking.
You can speak, yes.
I totally disagree with Kristen Camp. And what she's saying is wrong. What you all are saying is wrong. The judge disagreed with the decision. He did not overturn it. And he punted it back to the zoning hearing board. He took a chicken way out and punted it back to the zoning hearing board. If he felt that strongly that he disagreed, he would have said, I overturned the decision. That is what is done. So Kristen Camp, you are wrong. I don't care that I don't have a law degree, but everyone I have talked to says that the judge punted it back. The zoning hearing board can say, they can rule on a plan. He said, reconsider using my logic. He did not say, pick a plan.
Kristen, you want to answer?
No, I mean, I don't agree with her. So I'm giving you my opinion and she can have her own opinion. I disagree. It said, make a ruling.
Well, you know what?
It said, make a ruling consistent with this decision. If you read the entirety of the decision, it was extremely
We have.
clear.
We also have a lawyer that disagrees with you.
Well, then your lawyer has the right to advocate your position in the court, ma'am. That's why we have the court system. That's why we have the courts.
Yes. And I'd like to know also why Brian Nagel put his father's name on the appeal.
Because his father is working for McElroy Harvey now. He's working.
Yeah, and he just retired at the Chester County Courthouse. Yes, this just all stinks. You guys this all stinks, and the neighbors are tired of it. You're just taking the Malvern Institute side. You should have shut this down 4 years ago. Great.
Kristen, when the zoning hearing board has the hearing on, I believe it's the 30th of September, what can be discussed and not discussed at that hearing by any party?
Well, the zoning hearing board will dictate the scope of the hearing, but really it's to decide, I believe, what the judge's order was, which was they remanded to have them render a decision consistent with the court's decision. And the court's decision, as Michael Lynch read parts of it, it was clear that the court disagreed with the zoning hearing board and felt that they had proven sufficient evidence or presented sufficient evidence to be able to get the special exception and the variance is needed in order to expand a non-conforming use. So I don't disagree that the judge's order could have been more clear. And it's unfortunate that it is left to people to differ as to what it means. But I think when you read the totality of the order, it is clear that the board disagreed with the legal conclusions that the zoning hearing board reached. So I think that the zoning hearing board, there was a difference of opinion as to whether they should take additional evidence. I don't think they necessarily need to do that. I think that the Board of Supervisors, we made the board's position clear through the evidence presented by Mr. Smith. We presented the February 6th or February 7th, 2018 letter, which articulated the board's position. I don't believe, as far as the Board of Supervisors is concerned, that any further evidence needs to be presented to the zoning hearing board. I believe that Mr. Nagel believes that he has already presented his case. If the neighbors believe that they are entitled to or feel it's helpful for them to present additional evidence and the zoning hearing board will allow that, then that's fine. That's the zoning hearing board's decision. And again, I don't take it. I'm reading the court's decision and I'm telling you how I believe what he means by that. And that's not to say that there's 20 other lawyers who would think differently. So, I mean, again, that's why we have a court system. If the zoning hearing board renders another decision and the neighbors disagree or the Board of Supervisors is unhappy with it, but all parties have the right to appeal that back to the court.
Good. Thank you, Kristen. How about Marty? Next resident questions, if there are any more.
Yeah, well, I'm going to, yeah, Michael, that's correct. I would do that next. Is there another question? Anybody else want to make a question or comment from the audience?
This is Lisa. Hi, my name.
Oh, wait, how about caller with phone number ending in 895? You want to go first?
I think that's me, Joanne Murphy.
Go ahead, Joanne.
Hello?
Yes,
Okay.
Go ahead, Joanne.
Okay. I just want to say, in response to Kristen, where did Malvern Institute prove their hardship in any of their evidence? They showed nothing. They had no proof of any hardship to get their variances. There's no proof of any hardship there.
I don't think it's my position to try to digest what the court did. I'm stuck with the court's decision just as you are. And it's the court that ruled on whether they met their elements or not. I'm not here to tell you whether they did or didn't. I'm not here to advocate for the Malvern Institute, quite honestly. I'm here to tell the Board of Supervisors what I think the court's order does.
Okay, and I have another question for the Board of Supervisors. You were very kind in saying that you respect the neighbors and you respect everything we've done and the fight that we've put up.
Mhm.
However, if you respected us so much, why didn't you vote no position? And why did you vote no position on the original Malvern Institute when they proposed all of this? Why didn't you support the neighbors?
This is Michelle, and I wasn't on the board at that time.
What I can offer is that from my standpoint as one supervisor, in having essentially a neutral position but offering suggestions if the zoning hearing board opted to grant the relief, which we've already stated, that in having a neutral position, again, for myself as a supervisor, I put my respect in the zoning hearing board as an independent quasi-judicial entity hearing the application. They're independent, they're bright, and I am not going to, it is very rare that you're going to hear me as a supervisor either support or offer a opposition to an application that would, in my opinion, attempt to unduly influence the zoning hearing board. I respect the zoning hearing board. They're independent and they're able to hear the testimony, deliberate, and make a decision. And that was, as one supervisor, why I was in favor of a neutral position, again, with the caveats that if they granted relief, we offered suggestions. That's the best I can share with you, Ms. Murphy.
But we still don't feel that you supported us.
It
Well,
feels like you are all supporting Malvern Institute.
Well, I can't offer you anything more than that from my perspective. My colleagues may have a comment further, but that's the best I can offer, and I'll leave it at that.
Joanne, now this is Marty. If I recall correctly, and Ricky, please comment if I didn't. One of the reasons that we took no position was the fact that we are not lawyers ourselves. Save one of them, the recent member. He was not involved at the time.
But you have a lawyer.
We did that was the doctrine of natural expansion is a very complex and complicated issue. And we did not feel that we had the expertise to really wrestle with that. So we left the matter to the zoning hearing board, but we felt that because of that, if they agreed with us, or if they agreed that the residents had bona fide reasons that needed to be addressed, if in fact they gave them the right to expand the operation, that these conditions would be helpful to you as the residents. So this wasn't, we did not take no position for no reason whatsoever. It was based on the fact that we did not feel that any of us at the time had the expertise to wrestle with the doctrine of natural expansion.
But Marty, they've already expanded well beyond.
Well, I'm not.
And that's documented everywhere.
I would leave it to Kristen to explain what the rights of non-conforming use is, but and my understanding is that we did what was appropriate to do under the circumstances.
I want to offer here, I want to be respectful, Ms. Murphy, but at this point in time, your comment, that comment, it's kind of moot. It is back to the zoning hearing board. There'll be an opportunity next Wednesday, I think it is, to present for them again. And at that point in time, once they render a decision, and who knows, they may render a decision identical in contra to the judge. I don't know what kind of situation that would put them in, potentially contempt, but that's possibly what they could do. And in other words, just to duplicate what the decision that they already made. I don't know what would happen at that point in time. It would be very interesting. But at this point in time, the road has been paved, and it's either the zoning hearing board or the Court of Common Pleas is your next venture. And there's not much more we can offer on this. What has happened? It's now 19th hole. And we can't offer anything more than that at this point in time. And I'm trying to be respectful in that regard too.
Well, I think all of it could have been avoided if we just didn't. Go ahead. I'm finished.
Joanne, go ahead.
No, I think she said she was done comment at the moment.
Okay, then the next caller would be phone number ending in 930. Can you please identify yourself?
Todd Asusa, 927 West King Road.
Go ahead, Todd, you have the floor.
With respect to Kristen, if the zoning hearing board approves the Malvern Institute's relief request, I just want to go on the record and to have it established for any future zoning relief applicant to use in litigation for relief based on the new standard of economics is declared a hardship in East Goshen Township. Some neighbors believe that the township zoning officer's creative explanation of the judge's ruling is an attempt to gaslight people into believing the judge's ruling says something different from what it actually says. We feel like we are an animal farm and that we are less equal than Malvern Institute in the eyes of the supervisors. How can words be inserted into the judge's ruling to suggest the judge overturned the zoning hearing board decision when it does not say that? Thank you. I appreciate your opportunity to speak.
Anybody else, Susan?
Yes, there was another caller with phone number ending in 704 that wished to speak.
Hi, yes, this is Maureen Croft, 7 Brookmont.
Go ahead, Lorraine, you
So I'd like to speak to the Board of Supervisors. So, sir, to go against what you said, your opening statement was, I don't have a law degree, so you had to take no position. Sir, I think it's plain as day that it takes common sense. This is a great township. It's about community. You're choosing private business profit over a sense of community and public welfare safety. I'm raising a family with small children. I've had people in my property. I've had people ringing my doorbell at all hours of the night. Will Malvern Institute own up to it? No, but I live across the street from it. Imagine this was your backyard. And we're supposed to feel safe knowing it's going back to the zone of hearing when we have multiple noise complaints and they say it's out of their control. They're the ones that do make the difference. They're the ones that make the law. And if they don't follow through with them, why do we feel safe with their judgment? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Susan, anybody else?
Looks like everybody's, okay, caller number with phone number ending in 391. Would you please state your name?
Hi, my name's Lisa O'Neill, 10 Brookmont Drive, Malvern.
Go ahead, Lisa.
You know, we started out this Zoom conference tonight with a report from the police department stating that there was an
Hey guys, if you
older
took no
person.
position because you don't have a law degree, like, it doesn't take a law degree, it takes common sense. You chose private company profits over community.
What happened? Something happened there. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Lisa. I muted
All right.
somebody. Go ahead, Lisa.
We started out this Zoom meeting tonight with a report from the police department reviewing a scam that someone was scammed out of $43,000 and an additional $10,000. And everyone's face had a look of horror on it. Well, let me tell you, East Goshen Board of Supervisors, you just scammed the Brookmont neighborhood out of that in our home values. Yeah, so Kristen, you're the attorney, you're not the judge. The judge was not definitive in his report back to us. So yeah, I would appreciate you erring on the side of the residents of East Goshen Township and not scamming us out of $53,000 in home value. That's hardship, okay? You want hardship, you multiplied that number by everyone that lives in this neighborhood and that's going to be impacted by your approval for the Malvern Institute to expand. It is out of the question, inappropriate. This was allowed to happen when you opened the floodgates, and you should have tamped this down long before, but we do not agree that East Goshen Township should take the position of there's only two choices, a 2-story or a 1-story, because there is not. There are 3 choices. They don't necessarily get to go, and I don't appreciate being scammed by my own township.
Anybody care to respond?
Yeah, I'd like to respond. Again, the Board of Supervisors, I'll say it again, is a peripheral in this matter. The Zoning Hearing Board is the venue where the decision was made. Initially, the decision that was made was to deny the application in support of the residents and all of the interest that they put forth in their testimony and their investment in the application. The Zoning Hearing Board denied the application. If there is any direction at this point in time, it should be at the Court of Common Pleas. They have put a foul in the system, and now it's back to the Zoning Hearing Board. They have an opportunity to deliberate on this again, and maybe there is a decision that they will make that will be different from so-called option 1 or option 2. And then again, it is an opportunity, whatever that decision is, for any party of record, party of interest, to appeal that decision and see what the outcome is. That's where the energy should be with the Zoning Hearing Board, which initially was in the interest, the decision was in the interest of the residents. They made the initial decision to say, we're going to deny this application. That is not a scam. That was an assertive action that they took in their independent quasi judicial venue. And frankly, I could have lived with that decision very, very satisfactorily. But the Court of Common Pleas saw otherwise, Miss O'Neill. That's the reality.
But that is not, the Court of Common Pleas did not leave us with two decisions. They simply punted it back.
I think
There
you should
was
bring that, Ms. O'Neill, I think you should bring that up to the zoning hearing board for their consideration and deliberation and see what their interpretation of it is. And that would be a really good one to bring up next Wednesday. So, you know, I expect you will probably be there in attendance, and definitely bring that one up and see what, how they comment on that, and may deliberate, and it may influence what they end up ultimately deciding. I think that's a very good point. Go ahead.
It's Michelle, and sorry, Mike, I'm gonna correct you. It's not next Wednesday. Today is the 15th, so it's gonna be on the 30th in 15 days.
Oh, excuse me.
So there's a little bit of time.
Yep. 2 weeks from
2 weeks from tomorrow.
Excuse me about that. Yeah, thanks for correcting.
Susan, anybody else have any comments?
Yes, there's another caller ending in 088. Can you please state your name? Caller that just unmuted, can you please state your name? Third time, caller with 088, can you please state your name? All right, Marty, I just muted them back. I don't think they want to speak.
Okay, that's fine. Is there
Okay.
anybody else, Susan?
Caller that just unmuted, can you please state your name?
Yeah, my bad. This is Tom McElwee, 6 Line Road.
All right.
Can you
Tom.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good.
Go ahead.
Michael, with all due respect, I appreciate your opening statement. I find it in contradictory to your closing. We, as a neighborhood here, and I realize I'm on the other side of the line, we look at you and through this process as facilitators. Kristen, I watched you look at the neighborhood's attorney and tell him repeatedly he was wrong. And then when we got to the zoning board, you guys are doing a good job. Way to go, coaching it on. I understand an attorney's position. However, being on the border, the opposite border, I have interest here. There's a neighborhood here I can walk down, and I know we're rehashing old memories and logs of just about every other weekend, seeing somebody being coached back in from across the street on Line Road or up the road. I will ask you guys one more time to consider, and I know that it's past consideration, but I'd ask for you to consider in any recommendations that you guys have provided to the zoning board, the gentleman that was driving out on 76 who killed his father. He wasn't on premises. What would happen if he was on premises? The gentleman that took the cab and robbed the bank in Malvern. How does the detachment of the responsibilities of the Malvern Institute don't square? You guys, with all due respect, you pushed something through. You have been facilitators through the process. Whether you came up with, what was it, 24, 26 conditions? How do you arrive at conditions without having resistance to the neighborhood and hearing what the neighborhood, as you opened up, Michael, and said, we're listening to the neighborhood. It's clear that you're not. I appreciate your time, and with that, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your comment.
Susan, anybody else?
Any other callers? No, Marty, nobody else unmuted, and we have no emails.
Okay, I'll call a question then. We're voting on David's motion. David, you want to repeat that motion again?
Yeah, I move that we ask the zoning hearing board to consider the conditions originally agreed upon in their deliberations, the conditions that we included in the minutes of the February 6th, 2008 Board of Supervisors meeting.
Second.
Okay, that's what we're voting on. I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? 5-0. Thank you very much. That part of the meeting is over.
Thanks, folks. I appreciate it.
I will go back in the agenda to the items that we skipped over. John, the financial report is either for August or September. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, it's the August financial report. And there's some good news here. There's a positive budget variance as of August 31st of $120,674. And that's the first time we've had a positive budget variance really since the whole COVID thing started. There's definitely good news around EIT is about actually compared to where it was a year ago. Transfer tax, we had a very strong month of sales of property sales in August, and it looks like there's a commercial, an apartment building that's selling in the next, or probably this month, any day now. So we're going to probably see our property real estate transfer tax numbers come in at budget level. So, knock on, fingers crossed, things look pretty solid right now. And I was able to further refine the year-end projection. I think that we're going to finish the year with a deficit of $341,315, which is obviously a deficit, but better than what $150,000 better than what I was saying a month ago. So there's definitely good news, and all of this is despite the fact that the Act 111 arbitration award, resulted in $229,000 in change of unexpected costs. So there's some really good news here all around.
Don, thank you very much. It makes us, there's something tonight that it must make us feel better. So it might as well be you. That's a beautiful thing. Thank you very much. Some of this will be reflected in what John presents to the board in November, after he goes through another tirade with us, with David and I, which will happen sometime before that.
Did you call it a tirade? Was that the word you used?
Tirade.
Tirade. Okay.
That's my word. I like that word, John. John takes this thing very smoothly. Some of us, probably me, go into a tirade sometimes. So, but anyhow, John does a wonderful job, and I think you'll see that in the information he presents in the budget.
Point of information, John. At one point, you presented us with something like $400,000 of potential savings against the budget. Is that been implemented entirely, partially, or not at all?
Entirely, yeah. I mean, there were a couple of things that we incurred a couple of costs that did have one roadside trash pickup, at the margins there were a couple of things that, we didn't clamp down on right when they happened, but 99.9% totally.
So those governors are already included in the year-end projection, Jonathan?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I have just one question, and it's interesting as John gave his report. When I read something on the report, particularly the page 1 and page 2 of it or page 1, as John has a lot of the summary comments, I usually give a check plus, check minus. And the check pluses, John, as you reported, were well above the check minuses. So yeah, things that look like they're improving. The question I have, under the operating reserve fund, it lists $32,000 plus in revenues. Is that for the current period? And if so, what was the boost in revenue for that operating reserve fund?
I believe you're talking about, that's just interest income. Just
for the month, or is that year to date?
Oh, the year to date.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I would observe too, Mike. I mean, but it's a good opportunity to talk about that. When we started the year pre-COVID, we were getting I don't remember 1.8% on our money.
Yeah.
Now we're down to 0.23. So we're back to those 2012, 2013 era returns.
Oh yeah.
Fortunately, interest is not a big moneymaker anymore.
No, and it's going to be that's one revenue source, as John will share, and as I know from in my other world, that that's an impact on our budget receipts for next year. For instance, where I am, one of our funds, we had $40,000 in interest this past prior year. Next year, we're projecting maybe 10,000 at the most, and that may be optimistic. So that's a real impact. Okay, thanks, John. That's all I have.
Okay, doke. Anybody else have anything else before we move on? Anybody else have any good questions?
No.
Okay, the game plan, as John mentioned before, the Finance Committee will meet again shortly before John presents the November budget suggestion. We have a month to look at that thing before we take final approval. We must do that before the end of the year, which generally means that we do it the last meeting or the next to last meeting in December. So that's the schedule of the rest of the year. You agree with that, John? Okay, very good.
Yes, I do.
Okay, the next item is the two minutes from the prior meeting. If you recall, we had a very short meeting. I have reviewed a couple times the minutes of the draft minutes of the meeting. I find them okay. If there's anybody who has any questions or comments about that, or if not, I would entertain a motion from David. No, I got to give everybody else an opportunity in the audience to make a comment about that. Susan, did Susan leave me too?
No, I'm still here. No, nobody's unmuted. Anybody in the audience?
You're hiding
wish-
back there
Why don't you make a motion and second it?
Need a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented from the Tuesday, September 1st, 2020 meeting.
Second.
Okay, is there any comments from the guests?
No, we're good, Marty. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to accept?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anybody opposed? 5-0. Thank you very much. The next is the treasurer's report. Mike, I give you first shot at this. Then I would ask if anybody else has any other questions.
That's very nice of you, Mr. Chair.
I know that, Mike. It made me feel better.
I have no specific comments. I had a couple observations, but I'm going to let those go. That just had to do with the annual cost of certain things like fire hydrants or that sort of thing. So I will let that go. I have no specific questions on any of the disbursements that have been offered for payment. I'll defer to Michelle too.
Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to comment that I had some questions and they were answered because Mark Miller provided a really great synopsis of all of the projects, and it explained a number of the rental fees and whatnot. So I really appreciated that, and I hope that we're going to see more of the more of that type of report from him moving forward on a monthly basis.
Who provided that, Michelle?
Mark Miller.
Great.
He sent us, there's a letter in the packet that explains what all the projects are right now.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. And I'm hoping that we're going to see that frequently. It really explained everything. So made it very straightforward.
I appreciate that comment, Michelle. Mark had mentioned that to me as well,
Yeah.
and I commented favorably. It's a nice report.
Really nice report.
The pictures are always nice, but the content is very informative, and
I agree.
it really adds substance and
Yeah.
knowledge to us to be able to further disseminate that as people ask questions. So
Yeah.
thanks. For
Okay, the next item is we're going to skip. We obviously.
No,
have to-
we're
You gotta vote.
probably
We have
vote.
to-
Pardon me?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we graciously accept the receipts and approve the expenditures as presented in the expenditure register and as summarized in the treasurer's report.
For a second?
Yep, second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from your group?
Oh,
Thank you
Marty.
very much. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? I vote, John. Thank you. The next item is the item that has to do with the grant application for section, I guess it's B of that, and that's the large grant that we talked about, I guess, at the last meeting. The grant application is $300,000. And it's for the construction, basically. There has been spent associated, I guess John likes to call them, somebody likes to call them soft costs. That's around $646,000 plus. So that's what if anybody wants to make any comments about that. If not, I would ask for a motion to bless this so that they can make that grant application.
I think we're supposed to have a motion and then comments, but I'll make comments. I've asked John Altschul to bring us up to date on the total cost of the trail, Paoli Pike Trail. John, can you take the ball on that, and or do I have to ask all the questions again?
No. I mean, I'll address it. Actually, it's in the newsletter article that's going to go out in the next couple of days, so it's still fresh in my mind. So all total, we have from segment A all the way to segment G, our total projected out-of-pocket costs for soft costs are about a shade less than $2.5 million. Most of those have been incurred. We're probably looking at about 2.1 million of those have actually been incurred, and there's about 400,000 left to spend. Most of that is, or about half of that is for the easements for segment B. There's still some engineering work left for A and B, but most of it is accounted for. It's obligated, or in the case of easements, we're just putting the I's and crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So right now we've received a little bit over $3.6 million in grant funds, and if you throw in this grant application for $3 million, that would if we were successful at that, we'd be looking at $6.6 million in grants compared to about $2.5 million in township outlays. So I think that works out to about 72% grant funded. Now, knock on wood, this is a pretty ambitious, grant application request, knock on wood that we'll get it. But, what we've been told by all the decision makers is the more shovel ready we are, the better, the more likely we are to get funded for this project.
Yeah.
The last time we talked, you said your estimate of the total cost is 9.3 million. Was that?
Yeah, I think 9.1 is what I added up. I believe that was 9.1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
There's some of those two numbers are about what John just talked about. So that I think everybody has to realize that all the soft costs are being paid by us, and the construction costs are coming from the grants. And when you get a ratio where 72% of the money is grant money, you are really done a great job in doing that. And those that were responsible for that, I guess Jason and Mark Gordon particularly, it's really I want to thank them for the effort they put into this. They really know what they're doing, and I certainly want to thank John and Ricky for the financial oversight that they provided to this thing and answering the questions. And I think when this is all said and done, from what I see, short of the confusion that's going on up in front of the Wawa right at the moment, it's going to really be a terrific addition, in my opinion, a terrific addition to the township. And I think it's going to get a ton of use. And I expect that David will be the first one to ride through in the ribbon cutting ceremony, and we'll see if he stays up on his motorcycle or something like that.
How long is the trail? Total trail?
2.7 miles.
2.7.
Does anybody have any questions?
$9.3 million, 2.7.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective,
Okay,
John, the extension of the Chester Valley Trail over into King of Prussia, they're just doing one intersection. The project is $27 million.
27 million. All right. Well, I think they're crazy, and I'm not sure we're not crazy too.
It's always good to be a little crazy.
Those are numbers I wanted to hear. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Michelle.
So John, the grant that is going to be written, the grant request that's going to be written by Jason and Mark, this has been requested in the past. We've been declined. How many times have we applied And how many times have we been denied?
Jason knows those stats better than I do.
Okay.
Yeah, for this specific
Mhm.
grant, we've been denied 2 times. And 3 times, and based off of conversations with the decision makers, it's because our project specific for B is has not been shovel ready, which means engineering isn't done, final design isn't done, and right away, most importantly, hasn't been secured. So with the letters going out to the property owners, we're in a much better position this year than we have been in the last 2 or 3 rounds.
How often has this been? So what's the cycle? Is it an annual cycle, or is it
Annual.
how many times can you request this in a year?
So it has always been annual, but they're not hard and fast to that. So it can vary. But since we've been associated with the trail for the last 5 years, it's been an annual award.
So Jason, to Michelle's point, is it premature to apply for this, or should we wait until we have the easements inked in and have the engineering done?
Well, we talked to Natasha and the DDRPC folks who are kind of like the in the closed room kind of decision-making piece behind the grants. And they think with the low number of owners that we have to work with and how far along we are in the engineering process, and now that the appraisals are done, we can go to those owners with real numbers and say, this is what we can give you, that we stand a much better chance this year than in prior years.
Okay.
So, I mean, to answer it as simply as possible, next year we'll be in an even better position because right away we'll already be paid for and secured. But I think we stand a good chance of getting it this year.
But we're not guaranteed that there'll be a grant round
right
like this one next year.
Right.
We've been fortunate because there's been a real uptick in grants or programs for multimodal throughout the state and federal. We're being encouraged by DVRPC and DCNR and everybody to put in every single time. Continue to put in your applications. You're scoring well. You're up there high. Everybody has exposure to the project. They understand we're coming from both ends, and we have this middle piece. So yeah, every time we get a little bit closer, and obviously this time we're in a better position than we were in the last application. But
okay, if we're denied this time, are we going to apply again? Are we going to keep applying until we get it?
Yep. We applied to every grant that we've absolutely qualified for. This program, this project qualifies for. We've applied for every grant, and you know, we have not gotten an MTF grant yet, a CFA or a PennDOT multimodal grant. These funds are split up between the Commonwealth Financing Authority and PennDOT. So we have 2 buckets of money to go for, and there's also going to be a PennDOT round for multimodal coming up that we're going to apply for as well. We'd like to apply for. And there's also rumors that the TAP program is going to be funded again. And that's the Federal Transportation Alternatives Program. And we have 2 TAP grants already. Chances are they may not look at us for a 3rd one. However, if both of our TAP program grants are underway, they may consider. So we've got options, and we're hopeful that we'll get some money in this grant. We may not get all 3 million. So we will have to go for additional funds, just like CD&E are 2 grant applications, the CMAQ and the TAP combined to get us CD&E, the project that's going on now. That's
okay.
That's 2 federal grants.
So what happens if we don't get this section fully funded in this next grant? Are we going to start construction and then just cross our fingers that we're going to, what's the deal?
No, we have to. We'll have to get.
Was we're not starting construction.
Bear in mind that the state, also the state is well aware of what we're doing, and we're the first one out of the chute for the Mid-County Trail system, and they've been very helpful to us. They've been very helpful to the fellows writing the grant application back in the beginning, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I will say it's a lot more confidence. I have a lot more confidence right now than I did before because yes, you put them in and you get people used to the fact that you know how to do this. And our folks do know how to write grants. I must tell you, and that's really an art to be able to do that. And to make the way up in Harrisburg or wherever you need to along the way is also a tremendous initiative by the people that are doing the grant writing.
But to the point that Michelle, the question that Michelle had asked, I think it was our understanding, we discussed this during this past year, that we're not, as a township, we're not going to spend construction dollars until we have substantial grants to play against it. Now, whether it's the full 3 million and we make it to, or if it's less than 3 million, but we get, say we get $2 million in grants, then we'll have to have a discussion as a board whether we are going to put any money up to finish it or not. But the understanding that I thought we had right now is that until we have grant money, yes, we have the engineering done, may get the right of ways, the easement squared away, but we are not going to spend township dollars on construction until those grants are awarded in either full or enough that we have a discussion of whether we are going to have further outlays from the township. So that's my understanding.
That is correct. That is correct.
Well,
That
that's
is correct.
fine.
I would
But
say
if
that
if we don't get the grant, then we've blown, what, $600,000?
Well, that's a good question, John. I was thinking about that, and I was going to ask Mark and Rick, Jason, whether those dollars would be down the road, so to speak, whether it's whether it's 2 years, 3 years down the road, the value of that engineering, the project per se, the design that was done, the engineering is not going to materially change. That the easements have been secured. We've got everything ready, and it may just be a question of endurance and, going back again and again and being persistent, whether we end up asking 3, 4, 5 times, depending on what the economic environment is and the legislative funding environment is. But it does sound, I agree with Marty, and based upon what Mark has said, that right now, this coming year, with the action here, applying for this grant, we've got some options that we may get a good piece of change, but yeah, it's an unknown right now, and I'm not ready to spend $3 million on construction from the township unless we get real grant money. I think you guys are in the same pew.
it's been that way. In fact, I think Russ, I can't think of his last name.
Right.
He asked questions. We said the same thing at the last meeting. We're not going to, right now, we're not planning to do the construction until we get the grant money.
It's also worth keeping in mind that generally, if you get a grant, you can't use the grant to pay for expenses that you incurred before you got the grant. So it would not make any sense to do the construction and then try and get a grant to pay for it, because most grants do not work that way.
It won't.
Good point.
Bear in mind, I will tell you that the county is well aware of the fact of what's going on over here. And when they were working with West Goshen with respect to their comprehensive plan, and they made sure that in that comprehensive plan is the part of this thing that takes us into Westchester going through West Goshen. So there's a number of people that know what's going on, and that we started out, they were well aware of the fact that we were looking for grant money right from the get-go.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Marty. There are others that are looking out for us, whether it's the County Planning Commission or the other entities like the grant towards DVRPC, et cetera. So, we'll see what happens. These guys have done very good so far, and let's be hopeful and see what happens. But yeah, I'm ready to authorize you guys for my vote anyway to at least get this submitted and see where we go.
I'll make a motion.
Please.
I'll move to authorize application for the Commonwealth Financing Authority Multimodal Transportation Fund in the amount of $3 million.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Susan, any comments or questions from the group in the field?
Nope, it doesn't look like it, Marty.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye. No.
4-1, John.
It was
4-1.
no, 3 to 1.
3-2?
3-2 rather.
3-2.
All right, Mark, good luck with it. Jason, good luck. Thanks for your work on this.
I already submitted the application.
No, you didn't.
I'm playing.
Okay, guys, moving right along. The next is is Jason's time to shine with the recommendations for the regulations with respect to the trail. Jason, you want to lead the crowd in this?
Sure. Sure. So with the major segments coming online at some point at the end of this year, early 2021 at the latest, it's important to get public education out there so we can talk to all the residents about the trail, various user groups, so that everyone can understand how to use the trail, when to use the trail, expectations. So I know they're listed as rules and regulations. They're more so trail etiquette guidelines. So kind of in general, the park commission, we looked at this over a couple of different meetings. So really what we're trying to do is just provide safe usage of the trail, have expectations, and then, mitigate potential negative interactions between the various user groups of the trail. I have some pictures on there of various travel methods you might anticipate. And I just wanted to put everything out there of what you could potentially see. You're obviously going to see walkers, you're going to see runners, folks with dogs, bicycles, and then kind of these emerging like 12 to 15-year-old kids would be, coming from Bow Tree, coming from Clock Tower over to Dunkin' Donuts. And those would be the bottom three pictures that you see. So hoverboards, this thing called a one wheel, and then the e-bike, which are becoming pretty big. So I know they might scare you by their appearance. So I looked at the specifications and the width of them to kind of see what they actually mean on the trail. If I'm going in one direction, somebody else is coming in another. So to put into a perspective, the hoverboard goes up to 9 miles per hour. And I run 6-minute miles, so I run 10 miles per hour. So I run faster than hoverboard. So they're fairly slow vehicles. I think like if you think hoverboard, you might think like Michael J. Fox in the movie, going crazy. So that's a consideration. So I think in terms of, the board thing of what kind of modes of travel we can accept and not accept. I think the park commission's recommendation was we obviously don't allow vehicles on the trail except for public works. And we don't allow ATVs, four-wheelers, because they go really fast. They take up the whole width of the trail, and they don't belong on the trail. They're not safe. Outside of that, the pictures listed in these various kind of standard or emerging standard trail users, we would be acceptable on the trail. So somebody on a bike, somebody on e-bike, a walker, a dog walker, skateboard, these types of kind of standard travel would be allowed on the trail, with the anticipation that we educate the public on how they should be using the trail. If you're going to pass, you have to make auditory noises passing on the left. You defer to walkers, things like that. Let me see some of my other notes here. So I did want to get your feedback on helmets. I think helmets are a pretty big consideration. I see tons of kids that are 6, 7 years old not wearing helmets. I really think that we should make the policy as much as possible to be 12 and under should be wearing helmets.
With state law.
State law, yeah.
Everybody.
So then we should definitely be communicating that and posting that.
I do a lot of trail riding, and what really mystifies me all the time is I see a family out there.
Yeah.
Husband, wife, and 3 kids. All 3 kids have helmets on, and none of the wage earners are wearing helmets. It just how do you
they're called brain buckets for a
I
reason.
don't understand that, but
And they're called brain buckets for a reason. There you go.
You definitely have to do this.
I've seen some tragic accidents where adults have come into an emergency room and it's a life-changing accident just from riding their bike without a helmet. So whatever the state law is, that's what we should be following, period.
Jason, I just had a question about one of the ways to traffic calm and on the trail and to keep motorized vehicles off the trail is to install ballards. And I don't remember from our plans if we have ballards installed at intersections.
So Mark, I don't think there are ballards in the plan. We could always retrofit, but.
Yeah, gates or ballards.
Mark, you're muted.
Sorry, what was the concern, David?
Gates and ballards at the intersections to keep ATVs and motor scooters and things off the trails. So, you know, all the multi-use trails, the Chester Valley Trail, for instance, at every intersection, they have ballards where you actually, in some cases, have to go left and then come around and go right. It's a calming to make sure you're stopping at the intersections, and they're effective as far as safety and it's prohibiting unauthorized vehicles to get on the trail. So.
You can walk and ride a bike through them, right?
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
can you ride a handicapped scooter through that? A handicapped
Yes.
motorized
Yes.
Wheelchair?
Yes,
Okay.
it just keeps cars. And I mean,
Okay.
I was on the Schuylkill River Trail one day, and I'm over in Conshohocken, and I look up and there's a car coming at me from the other direction, and obviously a very confused elderly person wandered onto the trail in the car.
It was me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not
So
sure it got-
Jason,
yeah,
that's one of the other
familiar.
things that I noticed, Jason, was
So
on
I'm
here.
just saying that we ought to, this is a discussion around the rules, and I'm good with all these rules because they're based on the rules that other trails use. And so I support these, but I just some consideration for ballards at the intersections might be something.
Public Works could probably install them at the right time when it's, you know, maybe that's something you take a look at, but Public Works could do that pretty easily. We don't have to get a contractor
Drill a
involved.
hole and drop a ballard, and that's it. So.
I have a couple prejudices I'd like to share. One is the e-bike. I went out this weekend and checked them out. They are very heavy. If
Yeah.
anybody gets hit by one of them, it's a real shock. I don't see why we want to have any motorized vehicles, including the e-bikes. And I'm up in the air about the hoverboard. Those are hard to control. If we have people trying to pass each other and they're on a hoverboard, we could have an accident.
Or the hoverboard's kind of a passing fad, like almost like rollerblades. You just don't see them in this part of the world that much anymore. It just kind of came and went.
Yeah, they're on the decline.
They're pretty hot, right?
Rollerblades are back on the rise again. So
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm concerned that we're not seeing any handicap accessibility pictures on here too. That's a concern for me because I know a number of handicapped individuals who are out for a walk with their walker and their oxygen, and they walk a mile or more every day. I know people who, my parents have my dad has a scooter. He has a mobility scooter while my mom walks beside him. I don't know that this is going to accommodate them very well.
It will.
So this trail is 100% handicap accessible, meets every ADA requirement.
Okay, then we need to have photographs. I'm sorry, John. You had other prejudices to share.
Well, the photos
No,
in here are
I
just
just
for
want,
examples.
I want to
It's
ask
not-
Mark or Jason, as far as handicap accessibility, I think I was told that they're going to cut the curbs out. Is that accurate? Are they going to slant it down to, instead of a square curb, they're going to cut it down?
They're already done. The ones that are installed are done.
This trail is
Ones I saw
100%
were like that, yeah.
handicap accessible. Yes.
Okay. My other prejudice, and you guys probably won't go along with me, but I dislike walking through the park because every time I walk through there, I get a lady on one side of the pathway and a dog on the other side of the pathway, and I have the leash in the way. Is there any way we can say no dogs on the Paoli Pike Trail?
I would
That
prefer.
gets you into
I would
what are you going to do when they hit the park?
etiquette thing, as far as I'm concerned. A lot of these rules are etiquette related as to, you know, we see the same thing. David and I see the same thing on the Chester Valley Trail. Sometimes you get people just hot dogging, going way too fast, zigging in and out. And it's an etiquette thing, no different than us driving and then traffic signals and giving right away to folks. It's just, it's the common courtesies that, you know, are tough to regulate and enforce if individuals are just not being respectful of others in a public space with the particular activity. So I would like to see dogs be able to be walked there. They're important for people these days. And I think that with the interplay of the East Goshen, the Applebrook Park, with the trail moving through there where there, you know, dog walkers all the time, myself is one, I think that would be that'd be a tough one. I would like to have them be able to be with their owners and walking and enjoying the trail as well. Obviously, the part of the etiquette is making sure they're cleaning up as well.
Yeah, the leash length requirement does help that situation. And the one accident I had on the Schuylkill River trails, I hit a dog off leash that came out of a bush with a guy standing next to him holding the leash in his hand. You know, instead of being mad at the dog, I went after the guy that was holding the leash.
Jason,
it's not the dogs, it's the owners. You're right, Dave.
Yeah, but the 6 foot length, the leash length will you know, help that situation. So,
Yeah.
most people,
and I think
the Valley Trail, you know,
once we
fall
agree
out,
on
passing on
the
your left, they're courteous. Most people are, you know, pretty careful about that. So,
Jason.
Yeah, I think once we agree on the etiquette of the do's and the don'ts, it'll be the next step. Important step for me will be ramping up all the public education so that we have a good 3 months before the trails even open, where I can talk to dog owners, make sure they're walking right next to their pet, and they pull over to the side if they need to go number 1 and number 2, and bikes are using it in a friendly manner. So I think this is a nice first step today, but then the real step is engaging the public through emails and video demonstrations of exactly how the trail should and shouldn't be used.
Jason, another thing to think about, and I've seen this on other trails, is actually you know, similar to a highway where you put the dotted lines down the middle of the highway to keep the traffic on one side and, you know, the correct side of the road. Some trails do that also, and it just reminds people to not hog up the whole trail. So just something to think about.
And you know, that could be intermittent too. There could be a couple of locations where you put a line that reminds people, depending on whether they're getting on the trail or whatever. It doesn't have to be a continuous line. So that, you know, that'll be a refinement, I think, too, as activity starts to show itself and we either have incidents or we have experience with observation that would cue us to do something here, modify that. I do want to say, Jason, that if it's a regulation that you have in the draft, you don't have to say please. If it's a regulation, it is what it is. You don't have to say please do this. That comes under guidelines and etiquette if you want to put it under guidelines and etiquette. And that's
I'm a Parks and Rec director. I smile and I say please. That's what I do.
I know, and you're good at it.
And you get a lot of good results too.
Jason, down in Florida, they have a lot of these trails, as you probably know. Now, the one where I happen to go, if you use a bicycle, in order to pass, you have to have a bell that rings. So to notify the people behind you that you're coming and you're going to pass, because it's impossible for somebody walking and somebody comes up behind him and all of a sudden, the next thing you know, one person goes out to the left and the bike goes out to the left and you got a collision.
And
so you might want to think of some way of notifying. It should be bikes only.
And that's all part of bike etiquette too. When you're riding your bike and you're coming up upon a pedestrian or another biker, you go on your left or on your right, and you're supposed to shout those things out. Bicyclists have a number of commands and signals they should be using, whether they're turning or whether they're letting you know if you're with a group that there's a car behind, car coming, that, you know, those sorts of things. That's all part of the etiquette. And you know, just like the game of golf, there are a lot of people that think they're playing the game, but they don't ever learn the etiquette. And it's all a question of, it may be reinforcement. And I think it's just gonna have to play out over the months and years ahead as this trail becomes fully activated.
Mike raises a great question, Jason. If there's etiquette, whatever you want to call it, if there's rules of the road that people that ride bikes are used to, that is good people that ride bikes, not kids necessarily. But you put them in there because they're used to them. Because bikes and people don't go together. And it's if we're going to have a problem, as long as we limit it to bikes, which I assume we are, then you only have to worry primarily about bikes and people. Now, people aren't the problem. The bikes are really the problem because they go so much faster that you've got to have a way of notification.
Well, the people on the bikes can be the problem, not the bikes themselves.
No, well, yeah, I'm talking about that. I'm sorry,
I know.
Mike.
Jason,
But-
you may want to,
but Mike, the guys that are bicyclists, there's probably standard ways that they communicate information.
there are, Marty, people who ride bikes, as Mike said, and Jason, you might want to put this in the additional considerations for those on bicycles, to call out when you're passing, call out, pass on your left only, and call out and notify the person you're passing, whether it be a pedestrian or a cyclist, passing on your left. And that's what we do all the time.
I have another observation. I was just driving the length of the trail today with a family member who pointed out that there's really not a lot of room between the trail and the travel lane of traffic. And texting and driving are a problem. So is texting and walking. People are distracted on their phones. So they should be reminded to be alert because it is a trail and it's adjacent to a very busy road. People need to be reminded to pay attention.
It's a great point, Michelle, and there should be an absolute prohibited use of cell phones while riding a bike on the trail.
Yeah, texting too, for that matter.
Texting and phone.
Use of a phone for any reason on the trail.
You're right about, there's areas that are definitely very close.
Stop and take a picture with your phone, but you can't.
It's a concern. It really is a concern.
So addition, no using of cell phones while on a bike.
Yeah. I actually rode a guy into a bush. It's on a stroll.
It happens.
His phone headed right at me, and I yelled at him in the last second, and he went off the trail into a bush. I thought that was kind of karma.
It is karma. But we don't want to have that kind of karma on Paley Pike.
I think David ought to be the trail cop.
No, I think we're good.
I'm waiting for the chief to ask for an officer for the trail.
She's not on the call anymore.
Enforcement is actually an issue.
TRO. We need a TRO. Trail
TRO.
Trail resource.
You know, that's a very interesting question.
Oh no.
Well, wait a minute. You have to make sure that the police officers are very clear as to whether any of their responsibilities to ride that trail or not with a bicycle.
Oh, Westchester police have a bike patrol, so they might. I don't know what it could be an e-bike too, depending on what condition they're in.
Oh, geez.
You can't let e-bikes on there.
I was kidding, Mike.
But
you're gonna have the chief. You're gonna have the chief tell them the size of the officers. Oh, geez.
I'm going to make a motion that we accept the Paley Pike Trail rules and regulations as with any edits based that Jason feels appropriate based on our discussion tonight. Or do you want to draft and
draft? I'd like to see the next draft of it, David. I don't think there's a rush at this point. I'd like to see the next draft because I would like to see them.
It's only 2 weeks.
Do guidelines versus regulations so that they at least have some continuity in the way they're laid out. That's not knocking Jason. It's just, I think if something's a tip or a guideline or a suggestion versus a regulation, I think that wording be just a little bit more articulate and
just a little tighter.
Yeah.
I like the rules. Jason, you have enough notes on our discussion to present us with another draft?
I think so.
Well, I got some things written down, so I think maybe I'll scan them and send them to you just so you can take a look as well, Jason. That might.
Yeah. Yep. that'd be
But
good.
are you interested, do you want something that the police can enforce?
Well, the
I
enforcement,
don't,
I'll tell you how it normally happens on trails. You make the regulations, and then if you're getting calls and there's repeated, you actually set up somebody sets up on the trail and they pull people over for doing 15 miles an hour, and they can actually, yeah, to your question, Rick, in a lot of states, the police will actually cite people.
They can cite them. That's right. That's a next step. I don't think we're there, right, Jason, with your.
Right. Yeah. We would need to change ordinances at that point.
Yes.
Right.
That's my thought. This may be a first step.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you want to have an ordinance where the police officer could do something, then we need to adopt an ordinance.
Yeah, later.
If you're adopting trail etiquette guidelines, then there is no ordinance required.
But I understand, and I think that at least the first step. I don't know. I'm not ready to get the bike police on people or the trail police yet. But maybe I'm not being as prospective and proactive as we should be. But I'm just not ready for an ordinance to start fining people before we even get started.
I agree.
WeGo has bicycles and they do patrol on bicycles. So it's not like they have to do something new.
Right.
I'd like it to be a courtesy situation for a while, and if then we start to have some blatant incidents over time, then we say, you know what, enough is enough. We got to get the police. Let's get the ordinance in place, and we're going to have stops if we need to, and they'll be safe. But I think that's a couple years down the road, frankly.
Can I ask something just to clarify then? Are we saying that we are not going to allow any motorized vehicles, only foot powered and ADA compliant equipment? Is that what we're gonna, what's the deal?
Yeah, I think my opinion is that we allow motorized ADA, scooters for elderly or people who are handicapped. And I've gone 180 on the e-bikes where I was not wanting e-bikes, but I've now seen them all over the Chester Valley Trail, and I just ordered one yesterday.
You did?
Hey, we're qualified.
And you know how kids ride their little razor scooters in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
You see them all with the little razor scooters. Are they going to be permitted on the trail as well then?
Yeah.
So anything with wheels is going to be permitted?
Yeah.
Not anything.
You can buy commercially with wheels, I think. It would be up to the user to use it responsibly on the trail.
Those recumbent bicycles are another one where they take up a little more space.
They do.
They're pretty neat. I saw a couple of those in Hershey's Mill today.
Yeah.
But at this point in time with the e-bikes, I'm inclined to at least let them go to start. And if we have an incident, hopefully it won't be serious. But if we have something come up and say, now we're gonna have to put a quash on it. But I think they're gonna probably become more popular. I know that our trail is not as wide as the Chester Valley Trail. I think the Chester Valley Trail is 12 and we're 8 or 9 feet. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're typically 10 feet. We snake down to 8 feet in a few different places.
But the Chester Valley Trail, David, I think mostly is about 12 feet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And wider at some point.
John, just the bike I ordered, even with the mid-drive motor, weighs 33 pounds, which is less than my touring bike weighs with no motor. So, to say that you can't use e-bikes at all, some of them, I mean, they're the big ones with the big fat tires, the bicycles.
Right. That's what I saw. That was heavy.
Some of those, weigh a lot, but so do the mountain bikes, the big tire mountain bikes. They're 6 pounds too.
I'll wait and see what happens. I'll tell you this. The worst thing on here to get hit by is a skateboard. That'll take out your ankle like that.
That's the truth.
Broken hip before you know it.
All right.
All right. Well,
sounds good, everyone.
We're tabling this for
Jason, figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
9 o'clock.
You're gonna make a draft, I take it, Jason, right? Is that right?
I'll make a draft.
All right, I'll
Okay.
send you something tomorrow, at least a
Beautiful.
couple notes that I have, Jason.
All
The
right,
next-
sounds good, everyone. Have a good
All right,
night.
the next item,
Jason.
the next item, so Mike can get home and go to bed, is the
I'm home.
SPCA fees. Mike, what do you want to do about the SPCA fees?
Well, you know, I'll share with Michelle, John, and David. I've had this issue in East Bradford Township for years, and it has been the issue that if a pet owner has their animal that gets loose, no different than a false alarm, et cetera, they've got a responsibility. And when they go to claim the pet, I don't think the township should be, and the taxpayer should be burdened with whatever it was, accident or just plain nonchalant that they didn't watch their dog or what have you, and the dog gets loose and their fees, and the township should pay for those. I think that they're reimbursed by that party when they're identified. If you can't identify them, great. That's a public service. We accept that one. But the boarding fees, et cetera, the collection fees of the Brandywine SPCA now, as it's been reconstituted in the last 4 or 5 years, have gone up. And I think it's time that we recoup some of these fees. I don't want to create an administrative nightmare for the staff either, but I think some of these fees begin to add up. I know our fees in East Bradford last year were approaching $4,000. It's not that much money, but there's a responsibility that a pet owner has. And if you go drive too fast, you get a citation. If your dog gets loose and you weren't paying attention, and you go to collect it, you should be paying for that. And fortunately, they picked it up and the dog's safe, at least, or the cat's safe. You can at least get it back for a few bucks. So that's where I've been on it. And it's up to, if there's feeling of the staff that it's just a bridge too far at this point, or there's not consensus, I'll back off, but I'll continue just like Litter to make my comments about things like that.
I think there's a safety aspect to it too. Mike, I agree 100% that they should pay all costs associated with this. If the SPCA has a fee, they pay that also. But they got to pay back East Goshen. There's no reason, and I happen to be a dog lover. I have a dog. Sometimes I have more than one dog. I do my level best to keep that dog under control, and people got to do that. But if you get a dog loose, you don't know if it's going to run across the street or not, and you got a safety issue big time right there. And as far as I'm concerned, you probably have the same people having the same thing happen time after time after time. I would bet, because they're irresponsible. But if you're a responsible pet owner, you're not going to let that happen unless it's a freak.
I have a question. Is there any reason why the dog owners can't just go directly to the SPCA and pay them directly? Is there a chance that we can possibly ask them to defer payment or bill us when an animal is not claimed?
No, our contract with them requires that when the dog gets dropped off, or it's $112. And if they have to go out and collect it, it's an extra $45.
Okay.
I wonder, Rick, and you're right, that our contract, I think we currently all have now, it's a 5-year deal, and I think we're moving into our 3rd year of the current one, or maybe it's a 3-year and we're moving into the 3rd year, I forget. But at any rate, I won't be there around, but when we renegotiate that next time, maybe that's something we bring up with Dan Akoff, I think his name, who was the enforcement guy at Brandywine, and we say, what about this billing arrangement? When they come in to claim it, instead of billing the township, you bill, that you have the party pay right there.
Yeah.
It's at least something worth talking about next time we re-up the contract. We can't do anything now. I agree with you. It's not worth it, but.
So if we want to collect the money, we'll draft an ordinance, advertise it. It will come under Mark Gordon's bailiwick because it's code enforcement. If they don't pay, but if that's the board's direction, we'll get the ordinance drafted and advertise it.
Do you need a motion or just a direct to draft?
Well, if the consensus is to draft the ordinance, I'll do it and get it advertised. And then the next step will be as we have the hearing.
Well,
Yeah,
why
I
don't
think-
you draft the ordinance, take a look at what the language looks like at the next.
The language is in the memo.
Yeah.
That's what it's gonna be.
What you put in is enough for an ordinance. Okay, well.
Yeah.
So we'll get it in a legal format, yeah.
I like the language that was in the memo.
Okay. Well, I'm supportive of it. Since I
Me
brought
too.
the issue up,
Okay.
I would make the motion to accept the draft language prepared by the township manager and the staff to put it in an ordinance form and to advertise it for consideration at an upcoming meeting, whenever that is, whether it's next month or the month after, Rick, as your schedule permits.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Sure. Susan, is anybody interested in commenting in your world?
Doesn't look like it, Marty. You're good.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Everybody, anybody
By the
opposed?
way, I'm going to contact Dan over at the SPCA, Brandywine Valley SPCA, and let him know that we're doing this and introduce that idea that we just talked about, Rick. It may not go anywhere. He's
Yeah, it's okay. You need a third hole in that head anyway.
Mike, it's above Dan's. It's that Adam guy.
And Adam, I just may give him a buzz and just chat with him about it and say, this is
Okay.
where we're going, just so they know.
Okay, Mike, let's keep moving.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump around to the last one first, because that's easy, before Michelle gets to.
I'm not gonna be long
occupy
anyway.
some
That's
space
fine.
here. That's the stormwater agreements for those three locations.
Yeah.
Somebody want to make a motion about that? So
Chair, I'll move that the board authorize the chairman to sign the stormwater management operation and maintenance agreements for 1316 West Chester Pike, 980 Hershey's Mill Road, and 1538 Glenmont Lane.
Great.
I'll second it.
Second. Comments or questions from anybody? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, right? Okay, now, I have Ricky or John, I have no idea what this woman is saying in this email. I can't read her writing at all. But I think we got another letter of expressing their pleasure with.
Oh, it's just
somebody
thank you,
did.
right?
But I don't know who it's about or what. I can't read it. But if anybody can read it, that's fine, but I can't.
Well, it's a nice note. That's all we need to know.
It's a nice
Hope
note.
you're all continuing to be
Okay. The
safe.
last item on the agenda
Okay.
that I have is the Linden Lane issue, and I asked if she would like to summarize what's going on, and we got to take or not take some action here, I would think.
Okay, so just to remind people, this is the Linden Lane and Grand Oak Lane flood with any rain really more than 2 inches at this point. Every time it rains heavily, that intersection completely floods, and it's not 12 inches of water, it's more than that. The culvert needs to be addressed. That's a whole other issue. It's not just the culvert, unfortunately. The whole stream needs to be attended to. But the fact is that we're not able to access 6 residents in the event of an emergency. If any of them have a medical emergency, a heart attack or anything else during a flood event, we can't get an emergency vehicle to these folks. We can't get a fire truck over to them because where the intake valve is located on our trucks, and it's likely to pull water in an extreme situation. So looking at the rest of the situation with safety and whatnot, especially pipeline safety, Grand Oak and Mill Creek don't have any egress except for Boot Road. That is the only way our neighborhood can get out of our neighborhood. So this emergency access road would be along the easement of the Cynthia's property, starting on Goshen Parkway, coming down across the park at the end of Grand Oak at the tree line, and it would connect to the cul-de-sac. The reason we don't go diagonally straight up is because it would cut across the Cynthia's property, making it not really a viable, usable property, and because the incline is too steep for our trucks. So the problem that we have is we can't get to these residents in a storm event, a flood event. But the bigger issue is the pipeline safety. This could be used as an evacuation route in a pipeline emergency for both the Mill Creek and Grand Oak neighborhoods. We have over 250 homes in this community here. And we actually really should be looking at another egress if possible in Mill Creek. But at least in the meantime, we need to be able to get to these folks in the event there is a problem. So my proposal was to ask staff to please look at it. And you can see that they did look at it. They wrote it up. It would be in the neighborhood of $5,200,000. Of course, the right of way has to be purchased from Cynthia's. And it is an expensive venture, but we're spending $2 million on a trail that we don't need. And I feel like resident safety is really foremost here.
I accept the fact that it's a trail we don't need as an expression of your own interest, because I think it's a very worthwhile venture, personally.
I do
I think it's an excellent addition to the township. I do
do
not
too.
appreciate, so I think you said it in good, it's your opinion. My opinion is opposite of that.
That's fine, that's fine.
I have a question for Ricky. Ricky, in this, are there other areas in the township that have situations just like the Linden Road thing?
Well, if we, as far as a crossing where people can't get out because of water, this is the biggest one. This is the main one we have. You know, Reservoir Road floods, but there's an alternate. Bailey Pike floods, but there's alternates.
No, I mean, I'm talking about a similar situation where they can't get out. If you get a fire truck in or emergency truck in or something like that, that's.
No, this is the one, again,
Okay,
this
that's
is the
fine.
one, and I think one point that we know that the road overtops during a certain storm. The one question is that we don't know is how deep that water is. We know the road overtops, but we don't know how deep it is. And then the only other comment I make to Michelle's concern about the access, you have the same problem on Meadowbrook Lane. There's maybe 40 houses over, 50 houses.
I was going to ask that, if you're going to start doing ways in and out you're going to have everyone in the township, every place that's an issue itemized, because you can't do it for one without doing it for everybody.
No, I agree. I think that we need to.
That's fine, but you got to start somewhere.
We do. We have to start somewhere.
Yeah, well, you got to start somewhere, but yeah, but if you sometimes you're going to find out you have a very short career.
That's the way it goes.
You just have to.
We're doing the same thing with the ponds.
If you have a problem, and we know other people have a problem with getting out, if there's a problem, we should take care of it.
Absolutely. So I think that said, this is a situation here, particularly on Linden at this cul-de-sac, where we do have residents we know are inaccessible at this point certainly by car and ambulance, and likely a fire truck. I think that we need to have an access there for them in the event of an emergency. But again, we have to have a pipeline evacuation route to get out that does not cross Boot Road. As far as Meadowbrook is concerned, can't they egress through the park? Are there?
That's the street.
That's something we have to look at then. Yeah.
I think when you're doing this, you just have to. I think the idea is a great idea. I have no problem with that. But I think we have to figure out all the people, all the developments that have that same issue, because we got to treat them fairly.
Well, Mark and I actually drove through, and we pretty much identified that we thought that it was Grand Oak and Mill Creek that were really the worst off, but we didn't go down Meadowbrook, in all fairness. So we have to take a look at that.
Yeah,
but
no, that's okay. I mean,
as far as the flooding is concerned, I think that there are other places in the township that flood. That's a whole separate issue. And I'd like to ask if staff can actually identify those areas where we might have streams and culverts that perhaps do become overrun with water in big storms. I don't think that we should go outside at this point, because I know that that's a costly study for every waterway crossover that's done. I think that as long as we can identify the worst of the waterways and the flooding areas, maybe by November, but not sooner than that. I mean, I can't imagine we're gonna have, I think it's important to see it in the rain. I'm sure Mark Gordon has an idea too, of where these problem areas are. But the fact is that that's a whole separate issue. Really, the emergency access is really,
sure.
yeah. The emergency access is really my concern, and having that
Michelle,
pipeline
just a
evacuation.
question for you.
Yeah.
Why isn't, I've been on the board a long time, so I don't ever recall any one of these 6 people ever asking for some kind of relief. Is there some reason for that?
What do you mean by relief? Do you mean relief from the flooding?
Well, just like we just did the one for Hershey Mill through.
Well, they have actually. I mean, the Grand Oak people have, the Grand Oak and Linden people have been in a number of times. I mean, I've been to those meetings where a number of my neighbors have brought their photographs in and shown the township the flooding that occurs. I'm just trying to think. I can't even remember what year. I know that I've been to several of those. I had been to several of those meetings as a neighbor who was concerned about that.
Yeah, I'm not
Certainly,
saying they're not. I'm just asking a question. That's all.
yeah, no, I don't know how many times they've been in, and I don't know who they might have talked to in the township or not.
I'll
Michelle,
tell you one thing though. I know Ricky has talked to this when Glenn Alexander lived in that house down the bottom of the hill there. I mean, there was a ton of water coming in, and Mark Miller did some things to alleviate some of the problem, but it didn't alleviate all the problem.
No.
Rick has a couple of times said, if we want to fix that, we have to take up all the pipe and put all new pipe in all over the place because they're not large enough culverts, and so to handle the water. And that's the way it was done back in the day when you got the same kind of development I have, and it's just the way it is. Now the question becomes is, if we should take on that burden, you're going to talk about one hell of a lot of money.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not talking about taking on that burden at this point.
I'm just saying,
because
you got to be really careful in talking about water.
Of course.
Before you decide what to do, because people it's a very tough situation when you have a water problem.
That's
well, I think that
to go with the conversation here. I support the alternative access. I support us doing that, especially after seeing Mark's estimates and talking to Mark directly. I support that. My concern is we get this thing underway and we have an alternative, an emergency access, and then the residents come back and they go, yeah, but you didn't address the flooding. Now we want that taken care of. I'm concerned that then, because that is, we're talking not $50,000, we're talking $500,000 or more. Probably. And I don't want there to be an expectation that we're going to take this drainage problem on once we've created an emergency access. And that may be a tough conversation, Michelle, for us to have, but it's one that's kind of niggling me a little bit, and I'm a little anxious about that.
Yeah, I've struggled with this too, Mike, because I live here. I see these people every day, and I'm sure that they're not going to let it go. But the problem is that they have to also understand that this is not the only location in the township where this flooding occurs, and it's not a simple matter with waterways. It's not just a simple matter of creating a little bridge or widening the culvert. There's bringing the DEP in and getting their permits and bringing in, God forbid, we have to, get the Army Corps of Engineers involved. And, this is a much bigger project because just fixing one little section along one little street can adversely affect everything further downstream. The Hicks Farm, I mean, this last big storm that we had, Paley Pike was closed because this creek overflowed to the point where it had overflowed over Paley Pike. And so it closed down a major highway, a major road thoroughfare in our township. And if we do something here, it's going to be affected down there. And we need to take a much broader look at this. And unfortunately, I think the neighbors here in my community aren't going to appreciate that so much. But the fact is that we can't necessarily fix a problem without evaluating all of the problems that we have in our township, and it's the township's responsibility for the health to maintain the health and welfare, and safety of our community. And we could be looking at a lot, Marty, not just a little bit of money, Marty. I mean,
Hey.
we're talking about a lot of money.
Michelle, I know what some of this stuff costs.
And I
I've been here for a long time.
I hesitate to open the can of worms, but unfortunately the can has existed for such a long time. We don't have much of a choice.
Question. Ricky,
I agree.
on this problem that Michelle has, and
address some of it.
I don't minimize the problem at all. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
Is this the result of what was done in the first place? Was it done right in the first place or not done right in the first place?
The culvert, when it was put in, was undersized because there was no guidance or regulations at that time.
Yeah, but the whole place is undersized. Right down to it.
When we added the second culvert, we added it knowing that it was going to make it better, but it was what the township could afford to do. But back to Michelle's comment about residents coming to meetings. There's two flooding issues that we've dealt with up here. The first is the flooding that occurs internal to Grand Oak Run.
Right.
And that's because the piping in Grand Oak Run originally was an open ditch, which conveyed the water. The residents didn't want the ditch. The board agreed to pipe it. And that sort of like put a crimp on it.
Yeah.
In addition, the pipes are undersized. So we did have Nate look at that. That is a very expensive proposition to upgrade all those pipes. That is also affected by the fact that the culverts under Linden Lane are too small. They create a backwater condition which adversely affects the Grand Oak system. So the people that, in my recollection, came to complain about the internal drainage. I don't recall ever getting residents complaining about Linden Lane being blocked during the flood events.
I'll find the meeting. I'll find the meeting minutes for that. But yeah,
I don't recall them coming in. But again, if we could put the emergency access in, it's going to cost $50,000. We would need to get an appraisal.
Let me ask about that. Rick, Mark Miller is doing a job out of Cornwallis, out of the cul-de-sac in the back of Cornwallis, all the way over to 352, I guess.
No, Chandler Drive inside Hershey's Mill.
I'm sorry, that's right. I went through that. My question is, how much is that costing us?
I think my recollection is around $50,000.
We seem to be doing all of that with our own people.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Is that a main part of the cost?
Well, we had to buy a piece of pipe and we had to cut trees down, and that's the labor. If you look at the engineering cost, the engineering is about $20,000. Mark's cost total is about $31,000, and a lot of that is his labor. But we do have to rent some equipment, get some trucks, soil and erosion measures. But he's doing it. It'll be made out of milling, so it'll be a blacktop, but it won't be a regular blacktop road.
Yeah,
but it will be serviceable. But he
project.
Yeah, and we're getting the millings free because I watched a mill over at Alcott and Diggins.
Right. Yes.
And there's also, we're using our own people. So when you include $30,000 of our own people in the cost of $50,000.
Yes.
It's really a question of whether there's something else they have to do or whether this is keeping them busy.
Well, and another aspect of it for the Linden Lane project, then, John, is us approaching Synthis, and who knows, maybe Synthis will be a good neighbor and not charge us a lot for it because it may have a benefit to them as well. If nothing else, in community relations, it's not going to impact any property value that they have. It's not like we're splitting their lot. So they may be a good neighbor. I think they were the ones that were just in. We were good with them. They got the approval, and maybe they can be appreciative back to us and say, this is good for the community. it's not hurting us at all to give you this easement, this right of way. And we'll do it. Maybe not. And that could add a good piece of change, but I think that's the first conversation we have. I'm supportive of the project. I don't know how long we want to talk about this tonight, but I'm supportive of it and at least advancing it, starting with the conversation with Cynthia.
I think that's the next step. That's a pretty big TBD from my perspective. It's not included in the $51,000.
Right.
So I think that's the next step, is to let's have that conversation with.
Let's leave it tonight as saying, I think there's a general consensus with the board. This is a good idea. The initial numbers seem reasonable, but let's agree to see what Cynthia says. If Cynthia comes back and says, I think 300,000 will get it done, well, then we're going to have a different conversation.
And it's a no. Yes.
It's never hurts.
Let's hope that does not happen.
No.
That's a good idea. How do we do that? Do we have staff do that, or?
So
we have good
I think
contact.
the least expensive option would be to reach out to Cincy's and see what their level of interest in.
Yeah.
Clearly, if they're willing to donate the right of way, that's the best case. I guess the worst case would be is they tell us we'll get it appraised, and we'll have our guy look at it, and then we go down that path.
Yeah,
The first step would be to approach Cynthia's and get their
ugly path.
Is this where
We gotta hope for the
Friends
best.
of East
That's
Goshen
simple.
could help us out, since they're not doing the fireworks, that they could make a contribution to this if depending on what the costs are?
Well, I would
what
love to get
money?
Sunoco to do it. I'd love to get Sunoco.
Yeah. With what money?
Not a bad idea. That is pipeline safety. Not a bad idea.
No, we already conflated the trail with this and saying we're spending money on a trail we don't need, which I disagree with.
Okay.
So, because the trail can be used as a egress for pipeline evacuation.
Evacuation, well, that's true.
For some of, that's fair.
definitely
Okay,
not
that's
conflate
fair.
those two things.
I hope the pipeline doesn't go, David. I don't want to see you on your electric bike out there.
No, David, yeah,
That creates a
David,
spark.
that's a valid point. That's valid. I totally accept that.
We got to get you one of those bells for your bike.
You know what?
I have one.
David, not only do I appreciate that, I accept that comment, and I'm going to go with that, and that's my justification for the trail. Then, okay, fine.
Thank you.
You're right. It could be used as an egress for pipeline evacuation. Fair enough.
Well, it's almost
Touche.
9:30, folks. What do you say we kind of clean it up for the night? If there's consensus here and we just leave it with Rick to come
Yep.
back,
I'm good with that.
he finds out.
Okay.
Smart.
All right.
Okay, it's only 9:28, so I think it's a
That's
hell of
good.
a lot
My
accomplished.
my battery is draining.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn our meeting.
We never
Rick-
did public
Ricky,
comment.
before- Hey,
No, we
David,
didn't
just before you go.
We didn't do
Ricky,
public comment.
Oh,
Based
public
on,
comment, yeah.
based on what you heard with the Kristen thing tonight, is there anything that we should do or not do versus what we've heard? I'm just asking a question. I don't know if there is.
I don't know what you mean.
What
Well,
topic you talking about?
I mean, I don't know enough about it. I mean, I know what our role is, but these people are they're unbelievable.
Marty, I don't think there's anything more we need to do tonight on that one.
I'm just asking a question because
Marty, the matter is closed.
really
That matter is
challenge Kristen.
closed.
That matter's closed.
That's closed. I would suggest you move on to public comment.
John's right. The only thing we have to do is open up for public comment.
That's right.
Okay, then we'll have a motion for adjournment after that.
Okay, public
Do we
comment,
have-
anybody? Susan's still here? Nobody here? Everybody left?
No, we have, go ahead.
I'm here. Christina.
Go ahead,
Can you
Christina.
hear me?
Yes, Christina, we can hear you.
Hi, Christina.
Thank you. Hi. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the Linden Lane plans that you were just talking about. I think it's a fantastic idea to address both the flooding and the safety evacuation. I was just looking at some flood maps of the area, and it's clear what Michelle was saying. Those 6 properties are squarely in a flood zone. But as I was looking at the map that's provided of the 2 parcels, parcel 4 and parcel 5, I was noticing that the red marked area for the proposed evacuation route, parcel 4 is also a flood area. And especially where the the route takes a little turn there. So what I was thinking was if you just came straight back from that cul-de-sac and connected right to the Goshen Parkway, then you might alleviate the costs of building.
No. Yeah, we
can't do
talked
that?
about that. We can't do that.
That's
It's
the
too
route
steep.
that cuts across the Cynthia's property, isn't
Cynthia's
it?
property will then be divvied up to the
Yeah.
point where they may not be able to use it.
Yeah, it might
And-
end up being a taking, and then we'd have to compensate them for.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Additionally,
And-
the other problem is the grade. It's too steep.
The grade is steep. We were out there with Mark Miller, but
Yeah.
we're talking probably not an impervious surface for this, aren't we, Rick?
No, it will be blacktop. It will be millings, but they will, after time, they become pervious.
Yeah, they really start to
Impervious.
bind together after a while.
Oh, okay.
A real good
All
shell.
right. Well, you just want to be careful with that number 4 parcel because up there by the elbow, you're getting into another flood area. So you want to avoid having people being in what could be another flooded area. Now, the chances of a pipeline emergency happening during a flood zone, I mean, could it happen? Yes, it could happen.
Yeah. Well, Mark,
So-
take a look at that relative floodway or floodplain, depending.
Yeah,
on.
you got to do a flood map overlay of wherever you're going to put the evacuation thing. That's all I'm saying. And if you
Yeah,
actually
that-
just bring
that
it down
route
a little
doesn't make any
lower,
sense.
because you're getting too close to that
It
creek again.
won't work.
Well, that's a good point.
You're putting a road right in the floodplain. You can't do that. You're gonna
Right.
have to go up to the Hicks's property and up, and that's the only way you're gonna be able to do it.
The intention was to go through lot 4 and skirt the edge of the floodplain, edge of the basin. It's a magic marker line or an aerial photograph showing the general location of it. It's not an engineer plan.
No.
At
How
some
much-
point, the engineer will tell us where the floodplain is, and obviously we'll have to stay out of it.
Well, if it's
Yeah, 'cause-
floodplain, then Cynthia's can't use it either, can they?
Right.
No, correct. And the concern is that because that lot is somewhat encumbered, that they may want to combine it with lot 5. And so if you go down if you go down between lot 4 and 5, it adversely impacts how to develop or sell the property. So that's why we were trying to relocate it closer, go down there and skirt the retention basin and floodplain. We're trying to minimize the impact to Cynthia's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, well, there's
Yeah, as I was saying, if there was any way to just stay within lot 5 and not even impact lot 4, that would be ideal.
If I did that, then it would preclude Cynthia's from somebody from combining lot 4 and lot 5. And it could influence or impact how they develop the property, depending on where they put the building.
Yeah.
Keep in mind,
Yeah.
Cynthia's owns the other 2 buildings they own a building across the street. They also own 3 other lots, which essentially they combined into 2 to put their world headquarters at. So they're like I said, they're a big company, and we will, again, trying to minimize the impact to the possibility of them developing their.
all right. Well, that's something good to think about, and I'm sure you guys are going to consider that as you get back to us with the next step phase of this.
Okay.
All right. Good.
Okay.
Thanks, Christina.
Any other
thank you.
public comment?
Other motion?
Karen, do you have any public comment?
No, there isn't.
No, I don't think so, Marty. You're good.
One there.
No, there's Karen too also on here, but you're
All
good.
right. There's a motion to
Okey-dokey.
adjourn. I think David made.
See
Second.
everybody.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Mike's opposed. God damn, he wants to stay here for another hour.
Mike
Thanks,
wants to
guys.
stay.
See you
Thanks
later.
very much. I
I'll
appreciate
see you
it.
later.
Bye.
All right. See you guys.
Night.
Thanks, Marty.
Let's go out to the bike trail.